Hey guys, it's Codiak here, raid leader for Exiled Power. Today we'll be looking at the second encounter in the Tomb of Sargeras raid, Demonic Inquisition. Throughout this video we'll be looking at the fight mechanics, your responsibilities as a DPS, tank, or healer, and discuss execution of the fight from various points of view. To navigate to a specific section of the video, please follow the section breakdown at the top of your screen. Overview. Demonic Inquisition is a single-phase encounter where players will have to manage a new resource called Torment. Throughout the fight, various abilities will increase Raider's Torment. Players will have to properly remove the Torment by entering a second raid space available by using your extra action button. Lust. Lusting at the start of this encounter is your best bet. This provides your team with the maximum DPS possibility right out of the gate. Key abilities. Although not an ability, Torment is the main encounter mechanic that players will have to deal with. At 100 Torment, players will receive a debuff that reduces their overall effectiveness in the raid, and will increase the damage they take by a significant amount. Players must use the extra action button to enter the cage on Belak's back and pick up orbs to reduce their levels of Torment. Atragan's first major ability is called Bonesaw, a whirlwind type attack. Atragan will spin around the room, damaging all players caught in his path. Players attacking Atragan during Bonesaw will take increasing amounts of Torment, so players should switch to Belak to avoid unnecessary Torment. Similarly, Belak's major ability is called Fell Squall. During the cast, players will receive unavoidable damage. Like Atragan's Bonesaw, players attacking Belak during this time will receive increasing amounts of Torment, so players should switch to Atragan. Belak also has an ability called Pangs of Guilt, which need to be interrupted by your DPS players. Assigning a 3-person interrupt rotation should be sufficient to cover every cast. Be aware that backups may be needed to interrupt the boss while players are reducing their Torment. Belak also casts Echoing Anguish, which applies a debuff to a targeted player. After a brief delay, players will explode, dealing damage and applying Torment to players caught in the blast. Simply move to the sides, wait for the ability to expire and explode, or call for a Dispel. Finally, Atragan will cast Scythe Sweep, which is a simple frontal cleave that deals a large amount of damage and applies 20 torments to any players caught in the ability's arc. Tanks. Tanks will only have to deal with Atragan, since Belak cannot be tanked. If 2 tanking this encounter, 1 tank will start on Atragan. The other tank will start in the secondary realm, fighting the Tormented Soul Ad. Once the Atragan tank gets close to full Torment, simply perform a tank swap. The secondary tank should always grab Atragan before the primary tank moves into the secondary realm. This will ensure that players don't get hit by Atragan's Bone Scythe and other abilities. Healers. Healers will have to dispel Echoing Anguish at the appropriate times. Never dispel players that are near other raiders. This will keep unnecessary damage and Torment from going out to the raid. Occasionally, a healer will want to go into the secondary realm to heal up the off tank. Be prepared to jump in even if your Torment stacks aren't high. DPS. Make sure to interrupt Belak's Pangs of Guilt cast. Avoid attacking either boss during the major abilities Fell Squall and Bonesaw. This will keep you in the fight longer so that you don't have to reduce your Torment. If targeted with Echoing Anguish, move to the sides of the room and wait for the debuff to expire or call for a Dispel. Positioning. Since these bosses share a health pool, your tanks can be clever and keep them close enough to allow for some cleave damage, but must be careful not to position the bosses in range of the raid during Bonesaw and Fell Scythe. If your raid is having difficulty with positioning, simply move Atragan further away from the raid and focus on Belak for the majority of the encounter. The encounter space is relatively large, so players should have plenty of room to move around and avoid the various avoidable mechanics. Heroic changes. Both Belak and Atragan gain 1 new ability in Heroic. Belak will cast Calcified Quills occasionally, which sends out a barrage of spikes towards a player, dealing damage and knocking them up into the air. This is usually the tank, but players must pay attention to the timers and avoid being hit with the ability. Belak's new ability is called Suffocating Dark. This is an instant cast spell that places a purple void zone under targeted players. Raiders will have to pre-plan their movement as this spell does not have a cast time and will simply apply to a random ranged raider periodically. Avoid placing these void zones by the entrance of the room. This is where players will spawn after exiting the secondary realm. Final thoughts. Another straightforward fight that gets you warmed up for some of the more intense bosses in the Tomb of Sargeras. Pre-plan your movement to avoid extra stacks of Torment and always pay attention to the boss's major abilities. Be ready to switch to the proper bosses to avoid unnecessary Torment. If your stacks of Torment get high, simply press the extra action button, enter the secondary zone, and pick up the orbs that spawn from attacking the ad. If your team communicates well and coordinates your attack, you will easily defeat the Demonic Inquisition. If you have any questions about this encounter, please leave them in the comment section below. We'd be happy to help you with any issues your team may be having on this encounter. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you've liked this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. That's all for this video. We'll see you next time.